That is Cameron Stewart joining the show today. A brand new bombshell is at the Big 12. Molly Miller, who has won at every stop that she's gone, from Drury to Grand Canyon, and now Arizona State is about to revamp the game in the Big 12 as the new head coach of the Sun Devils. And then BYU hiring Lee Cummard. This is one that I really want to dive deep into. I know we don't talk a ton of women's basketball, but the Big 12 is as deep as I can almost ever remember it. It used to be 3 schools that were good: Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma. Now it's 6 or 7 that are vying for tournament games every year. Let's start with Molly Miller and Arizona State, but I do want to come back to BYU's hire, going with an assistant of the deposed head coach, which is always a weird optic, especially after the men's team hired the best NBA assistant out there. Okay. And Molly Miller was high on the list, it sounds like, for the BYUs and Arkansas of the world. Here she is at Arizona State. From Drury in Missouri to Arizona State, Molly Miller is a great new addition to the conference.
Unbelievable. Great to have her here. You said it. I mean, that was absolute bombshell news for sure. Like, that news is still really hot off the press, I would say. And honestly, I think they must have given her an attractive offer to come to Arizona State, because she would have had plenty of suitors, courting her in this last couple of weeks with the great things she did at Grand Canyon. But now here she is. I mean, more or less the cover girl for Arizona State women's basketball. I think it is a big addition to the conference. And also, you talked about it. It is deep and still wide open, this conference. 15 years ago, Baylor was great, and you also had some really good Oklahoma, A&M, UT teams, but they were all second to Baylor. Who's going to come in second, kind of thing. Now this is wide open for anyone to win any year, it seems like. There's no superpower. But certainly Molly Miller brings a lot of wandering eyes to women's basketball in the Big 12.
Yeah, she's going to elevate the conference. And a big piece of that could be her wonderful, loving husband and kids who will join her. She's going to, yep, they're all coming with her. It's going to be it's a full caravan.
This is news, huh?
Is that, am I breaking that to you? They are joining the Arizona State family. And look, this is the biggest piece of her being in the Big 12 is winning. When Kim Mulkey left Baylor, I thought the hottest move that Mack Rhoades could have made at the time would have been to go get the hottest young coach in college basketball. And that's someone who was winning at a championship level at Drury. And I can't, yeah, sure, you're talking a complete different level of collegiate basketball and trying to trust that person can find their way in the Big 12. But all she's done is win. All she will do is win. There are those coaches, Rick Pitino, from Providence to St. John's to Kentucky and Louisville. The guy just won, and she brings that same level of winning drive and factor. And so I think having Molly Miller in this conference is big. I wish Baylor would have hired her. They ended up going with Nikki Collin, who was a great selection, but Molly Miller probably could have given you more. And now she's in the Big 12. And I think if you're the rest of the schools in the conference, you're probably looking at this going, man, we wish we had a coach like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that we see a lot more in like men's basketball and football than we see in women's basketball. That kind of mentality that you're talking about there of getting the hot young coach who is rising up the ranks, and it's something that I think Baylor was just not ready to take the chance on at that point. They were saying we can get someone from the professional level and much like what BYU did with men's basketball. And that's going to be, even though that's a big risk as well, to bring someone into a major college program who hadn't coached college before, they thought that was a more calculated risk than the hot young coach, Molly Miller.
Yes.
And now they'll get to go head to head, which is great.
When you mention hot young coach, that was the story really for Kim Mulkey, which this is not too different for Kim Mulkey coming from Louisiana Tech and then going to Baylor. And when she was hired by Baylor, it was, she's got it, right? This is a big move, but can she win at a higher level? And within a couple of seasons, she's knocking off national championship trophies, beating Michigan State and putting Baylor at the very forefront of women's basketball. And the Bears still carry that as a flagship of the university's athletic department today, with Nikki Collin taking that torch. Yeah, what you got?
No, I was going to say, yeah, like the Kim Mulkey thing was interesting because she had coached a couple of years at Louisiana Tech. They had obviously known her as very successful as a player and assistant as well. And so there was, some debate as to whether she was a hot young coach, but she did have that it factor that you're talking about. That's, which can kind of put you over the top if you're like, I don't know if this is a hot young coach, but that kind of it factor would definitely put someone like that over the top.
Yeah, the BYU hire, I don't know, man. Lee Cummard is a legend there.
Oh, it's Cummard. Gotcha.
Yep. And what did you think it was?
Cummard.
Lee Cummard.
Cummard sounds more realistic.
Yeah, I don't guess I've heard it in
I thought it was kind of like that Utah dialect,
in spoken word yet. He, in the write-up, BYU has hired Lee Cummard. It says he helped lead BYU to back-to-back postseason appearances, the WBIT and the WNIT. Man.
Which you just deemed wasn't good enough by the coach that hired him. It's so weird.
Right. So he's a BYU guy through and through. He's a legend. And hiring legends doesn't always work. Jimmy Dykes at Arkansas. They can really become a tough situation. Women's basketball is no stranger to this. And yeah, I know he's got a big name. He's been with the program on the men's side and the women's side as well. But you just, your deposed head coach that wasn't getting the job done, gone. Is hiring their assistant better than that? Especially when your basketball team on the men's side went and got the best assistant in the highest level of basketball. But on the women's side, you're like, well, it's getting kind of late in the hiring process. This guy is still over here. Hey, Lee, what do you say?
You haven't sold the house, right? That is it looks pretty bad optically when you have gone out and gotten an NBA guy as your men's coach, and you're about to spend a couple $1 million to bring in the best recruit in all of high school basketball in the men's side. And then to just be like, yeah, sure. Cummard likes it here. Yeah. Let's just get, it's not a great look.
Who's a nice guy? Who's a great guy? Lee, man, we've been talking about it. Why don't we just, give it to him.
By the way, this is just some intern who's walking into the AD's office. He's like, Lee is still around. Did you know that? He's actually he's down eating a bagel right there at the facility right now. I think he might be interested. We could get him to come on board.
Right. Man. And you could say, well, we don't want players to leave out of the portal. You kind of do. You were kind of bad.
Some situations, yes, you do. Yeah.
It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to start over. And what's also crazy is this is a direct quote from the press release from BYU. Cummard suited up for the Cougars from 2005 to 2009, where he earned All-American status as a junior and senior. Half of the write-up isn't about him as a coach. It's about what he did as a basketball player on the men's team when he was there in the early 2000s. That isn't always a recipe for great success. It is typically a recipe, half the time a recipe for a legend, a guy who everybody's like, oh, I know the name. This is an All-American. He's great for our university. And then in 4 years, his legacy there is tainted.
Yeah, ask the Memphis fans.
Yeah, now, oh, shoot.
Ask the Georgetown fans.
Can we root for that guy? Because he's one of our native sons, but it just didn't work out. I don't want to look up 3 years from now and you ruined the name of a legend, or you put a black spot, a mar on the name of a legend at BYU.
Man, Cliff Kingsbury used to not be able to buy a drink in Lubbock. I don't think that's the same.
Is he married yet, by the way?
I kind of hope not. I'm all in for the nuclear family, but I'm also for a dude making his money and not having to split it.
Crazy, man. That was a big thing at Tech. Why isn't this guy married? Good looker.
Live your life, man.
About hot young coaches.
Born to be alive.
For the first time in this segment, when we mention hot young coach, we actually talk about their looks.
I don't like talking about their looks.
Cliff Kingsbury fits that.
Coaching ability.
Yeah, don't take your hat off. This has been It Always Will Be. At Real Cam Stewart on Twitter. Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.